It's October 24th, 2022. This is a special edition of Rook. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 209 of Rook, the Uprising, the rebirth of Iranian pride. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto. Salam dostan aziz. Durud ba shama. What we are witnessing is nothing short of the rebirth of Iranian pride. And this is a thank you to the girls, women, boys, men of Iran inside, fighting for change, inspiring the world, creating the conditions where we are finally turning the tide. The rebirth of Iranian pride. We hear from voices within the borders of the homeland saying, this is the case. How nihilism, resignation, and fear of their own assertions are being erased. But it's also happening across the diaspora. An unstoppable energy that is spreading. Berlin, wow, Toronto, LA, Sydney, Vancouver, London, Tokyo. Our chants have become an expression of years of suppressed identity being heard in the global city streets out loud. Our chants are the collective catharsis of 43 years of being unable to say we're actually proud. Not with an asterisk this time, not with a disclaimer, not with an explanation, not with having to clarify our representation. No, we are not the mullahs. No, the regime is not the people of Iran. No, we don't agree with the ayatollahs. Yes, we want them gone. If you'll allow the indulgence, let us tell you what it's been like. Those of us who've lived in the diaspora for decades, those of us who were alive, even if we were kids, during the '79 revolution and the hostage crisis that ensued, those of us who can still taste the bitterness of that international mood. The terror and repression of this barbaric regime that created over 4 decades of shame, the ludicrous policies, the embarrassing pronouncements, the cozying up to the worst of global despots serving to soil the Iranian name. Look, let's not kid ourselves. There's a long way to go. More people in America, for example, view Iranians negatively than positively, according to the most recent research. And that's by a long shot. Decades of stereotypes and generalizations born and bred from the actions of a murderous theocracy are not easy to undo. But in this moment, we're witnessing something new. Maybe it's the witnessing of the rebirth of Iranian pride, because finally the world is seeing a different side. Because of the women on the front lines leading the way. Because of the artists, the activists, the workers and students who will no longer stand silent. They're not just changing Iran, but restoring our own self-identity. You see, we've been the Hollywood villains and the reflexive enemy state. Now the Iranian people are being endorsed by thinkers and celebrities and freedom lovers. We may not be quite used to that yet. And you know, those of us walking in the marches are no longer only supporting the great souls inside Iran battling for insurrection. We are simultaneously recapturing our own backgrounds in an Iranian resurrection. And it's in the songs and slogans and colors and diversity. It's in the sounds of the eloquence and passion at every rally and mass gathering. For the hope that all the glory, the love, the poetry, and cultural majesty can once again be seen, for that light that can once again shine on an Iranian dream. There is no turning back. There is a reason we see photos of Berlin and cry. It's because we see an Iranian spirit and unity that didn't die. Thank you to the girls and boys and women and men who have led us from inside Iran. This is the rebirth of Iranian pride, and let's invite it back forever. Today we have another special edition of our program featuring voices from across the diaspora, including award-winning psychotherapist and author Shirin Azadi in London, and professor and writer Dr. Rahmani in the Rook studio. Plus, the Rook Roundtable convenes with Pega, Shaya, and the return of Kian. This is Rook, Episode 209, The Uprising, the Rebirth of Iranian Pride. Here we are in the Rook studio with the on-air team that has been convening each week, twice a week actually, during this uprising in the last 5 weeks. Hello to you, Pega.
Hello.
And Shaya, hello to you.
Hi, Azza.
And also in the studio, our returning champion, Kian Nademi. Hi, Kian.
Hi, Jian.
Nice to have you here.
It's good to be here.
Well, actually, I mean, we're going to kick things off in terms of the interview guests in just a little bit from London, Shirin Azadi. But let me put it to the group first up. Shirin was in Berlin this weekend, so she can talk to us about that incredible sight of, 100,000 people in Berlin that we all know about, the big demonstration that happened. I posted on Instagram that I was just so proud of Iranians, and that I had tears in my eyes just looking at the pictures of Berlin. I just did an opening essay about pride. Kian, we haven't heard from you here since, haven't had you in the studio since the uprising began. Do you feel that sense of pride yourself? How have you been processing the last few weeks?
I mean, it's horrible what's happening in Iran. It's absolutely devastating, and it's very hard to watch. But the one positive thing that has come out of this is the unity. All ages, all different ethnic groups, everybody has come together in support of one another. And it brings tears to my eyes every time I go to one of these protests, just observing. You know, what was it, 50,000 people in Toronto alone, 100,000 in Berlin? When have you ever seen that?
We've never seen that.
Never.
Not in our lifetime.
Never.
In the diaspora. Do you, I've noticed you very active in social media, and you're never somebody who I've thought of as an activist or somebody you don't wear your politics loudly. You clearly are these days. Tell me about that. Tell me what that's been like for you.
How could you stay silent in a time like this? I think anybody outside of the West who's Iranian is feeling really guilty. We're not inside Iran. We can't do anything on the streets to help. So what can we do? We have to amplify their voices and just get the word out as much as possible, and do not stay silent. For God's sake, just keep it up, because nobody else is on our side. You know, and our politicians certainly aren't in the West. So
you don't
somebody
feel like
has.
The politicians
I do not. Otherwise, they would fucking do something about it. You know, stop dealing with them behind our backs. So who's gonna speak for the Iranian people if not us?
You were at the demonstration in Toronto on the weekend. Tell me, first of all, how you reacted to seeing Berlin, and tell me how you felt about things walking the streets in Toronto.
Jian, I can't help but it brings tears to my eyes just seeing the amount of unity. And there was a video clip of this sweet old man walking. He could barely walk, but he was just a part of the protest in Toronto. And I'm just imagining, like, everybody's coming together because we all want this so badly. So we'll do everything. We financially, whatever it takes, we want freedom for Iran.
When I saw the pictures, it was Saturday morning our time, so we were a few hours away from going on a demonstration ourselves, but we're seeing pictures from Germany coming in and video coming in of the crowd there, and I like you, I literally got tears in my eyes, and I was thinking, this is weird. Why am I crying looking at a crowd of people? It's a picture of a crowd and I'm crying. Yeah. But that's how profound the emotions are behind this, where these are things that we've and what I was trying to say in that essay, these are things that we've wanted our whole life. We've wanted to feel like we belong to a group that is recognized, Iranians, and that is seen in a positive light, and is that strong, that unified, in a beautiful Western city coming together like that. And it's emotional. Were you feeling that, Pega?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's this shared feeling
that you have walking alongside 50,000, 100,000 people in whatever city outside of Iran it is. It's to know that, you know, you turn around and the person next to you is sharing all those same feelings of whether it's hope or apprehension or sadness or exhilaration or all these feelings that we've continuously talked about. And also the shared goal. I mean, we all want the same thing. We want freedom for Iran. And to know that you have the support of whether it's 50,000 people locally or 100,000 people in another city, and to see that reflected whether you're at the demonstration or seeing pictures of it, I think that's why it hits us so hard.
It's amazing how familiar the lexicon has become in such a short time, and internationally. Like, you just have to say her name and we know to say Masa Amini. You know, you just have to say hey oh, we know what to say. And it's not just happening in Toronto, it's happening everywhere. Shaya, you're nodding?
Yes, I'm nodding because it's really profound. Like, even with non-Iranian people, you say her name, someone probably will say Masa Amini. It's amazing. I have a question. Do you think in other diaspora communities something like Berlin or like Toronto would happen or no? Like, let's say in Argentinian in exile, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, you know, one of the things that is so important about what's this in Iran is for us as Iranians, I think, is there's been so much repression, and we've kind of been, again, this is what I was trying to go with the rebirth of Iranian pride, we've kind of been closeted about it. I mean, you know, for somebody who is more recently coming from Iran like yourself, there's so much pride in being able to be vocal and all of this. But for someone who, like me or Keon, where we've grown up here for years, and we know what it's like to be whispering that we're Iranian in some places, just to get through whatever the moment was, without having to, you know, get into a big argument about, no, we don't support Khomeini, or we don't agree with this, or just even to deal with, you know, the negativity. I mean, again, surveys show, as I mentioned in the essay over and over again, that in the West, in places like the United States, and even in Canada, there's a negative impression of Iranians based on stereotypes, based on generalizations, based on a regime. Yes, if you just look at that regime, you would have a negative impression. That's not who we are. And so to be walking in Toronto and to have non-Iranians who are up in the buildings, you know, cheering us on and giving us the peace sign, and, you know, that's a different thing that I dare say some other communities maybe wouldn't feel in the same way, because they haven't been hated for as long, you know, or reviled for things that, you know, are not necessarily our fault. I mean, there was a revolution that we could take the blame for, but, you know, go ahead, Keena.
I was going to say, the other thing I noticed is, you know, for as long as I can remember, I've always said I'm Persian. I don't say I'm Iranian. Recently, everyone is, because we're finally proud to be Iranian. The public has finally seen that, wait a minute, the Iranian government is not the Iranian people. There's a difference. They don't represent the same thing. So we can finally proudly say, I am Iranian.
And cool celebrities are now, you know, I mean, we're not quite at the level of the Premier League changing its flag to the Ukrainian flag, you know.
Hopefully we'll get there one day.
That was amazing. That kind of support that the Ukraine felt in the spring and still feels, I would hope, you know. But we're sensing a bit of that. What it's like to have really have the world just wake up to the hardship of Iranian people. I mean, I think I see that picture again of the 100,000 people, and I think about my family. I think about, you know, how difficult it was for my dad to be separated from, you know, his mom and our family in Iran. How members of our family, that extended family, that died in the Iran-Iraq War. All of the shit that we've all been through. You know, just even myself not being able to travel there for my whole lifetime. You know, that stuff is. You realize how it's not that deep. It's close to the surface when you start crying by looking at a picture.
The other thing is something I'm really excited about, and I feel like this is the first time in my life where I don't have to defend myself being Iranian. I mean, I think growing up, anyone who I ever spoke to who wasn't Iranian would kind of, like you said, connotate being Iranian or Persian or whatever we want to call it with the regime and what they saw in mainstream media. And this is the first time that I feel like I speak to people and I say, I'm Iranian, or this is what's going on in Iran. And I don't get that sense of being defensive where I have to prove to them that, we're much more than just what's being portrayed in, as a result of the government.
Yeah.
And that's the power of social media. The only way they're getting this information is through social media. They're like, oh my God, before 79, women had freedom. Who knew?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what my white friends are telling me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I actually equivocated about having this conversation because we don't want to, I certainly don't want to suggest that the horrific things, you led appropriately, I think, Keon, with I'm horrified by what the horrific things that are happening in Iran right at this moment, people being imprisoned, detained, tortured, killed, kids, that surely is the priority. That surely is the thing that we should be focusing on. That, and that surely is the reason why we're exhausted from not sleeping and traumatized by looking at the images of what's been happening in Iran for the last 5 weeks. But I do also believe that we have to take this moment or a moment, or maybe a couple times a week, to go, wow, that was a great thing. Kudos to those people who organized Berlin so well. Kudos to the folks who spoke there, and our buddy Ali Azimi playing there. Kudos to those people around the world who came out this weekend. There's a piece of art that's hanging in our office now. Mm-hmm. Big props to our team member, Anahita. It was her idea. She came to the protest in Toronto with a giant canvas and carried it throughout. And we sat at Nathan Phillips Square, which is Toronto City Hall, for a couple of hours. And she and I were holding markers, and people came and signed this thing. Probably 1,000 people signed whatever they want on this, and it is maybe one of my favorite pieces of artwork. And I'll look at that forever and feel emotional looking at it. And even just a couple of people who've passed by who've looked at it and have gotten tears in their eyes just because it is the people, it's the and just holding those pens and seeing the desire of all of these different people to want to sign this thing and say something like, we're with you, Nika, or let's have a revolution, or proud to be Iranian, or whatever they were writing, a lot of it which is in Farsi, so I can't read it. I keep asking Shaya, please tell me what this says. Pega, what does this say? But
I was going to say, actually, even standing there and seeing every individual who came up to write something, I took a couple of minutes just to observe the people, and that emotion and everything that we keep talking about, it was so apparent in just their faces, the way that they wanted to hug, whether it was Anahita or one of us, or, just to express that feeling in one way or another.
And how important it was, what they were going to write on. Mm-hmm. It's just a bunch of people, a couple of people holding a canvas and then anything else. But it was really important that people thought about, what do I want to write on this thing? And it just felt really wonderful. Now, that said, I wanted to mention that, we talk a lot about unity, and I do agree that there is a great deal of unity that is so inspiring right now. But I should also mention that at the Toronto demonstration, at least at the culmination of it, there was that thing that we're not unfamiliar with, where there were 2 or 3 different groups, none of which I'm a member of. Unfortunately, I don't have a home in these competing factions, but kind of having, dueling demonstrations. And, there's one group over here chanting something and another group over there with a speaker speaking. And I don't know how we can just stop doing that, as a community. It's really not helpful. It's really not welcome, and it really kind of, I feel like, undermines the point. The power is the thousands of people walking together, and it's not really who gets to speak and who's the but yeah.
But thankfully, it seems like it's a small percentage.
It is.
Really small. So it doesn't it does not overpower the crowds.
Yeah. The message is that,
Yeah, I think it was a couple of episodes back when we were talking first about the sense of unity and, being taken aback by the large numbers of people and not seeing that. Because up until this Saturday, I hadn't seen that. I hadn't seen that at any one of the protests that I had gone to.
True. Yeah.
And so at the end of the protest on Saturday, when that kind of started to happen, I was just thinking, oh, well, there it is, you know. And it was almost this thing that I had expected at every single protest leading up to this. And
it has been. You haven't been to as many protests in the last few weeks. There, it has been present a few times. But you know, the big message, and certainly everything I was hearing. I mean, we'll ask Shirin in a moment, who has just arrived back in London from Berlin. But everything I've heard from Berlin was just complete unity, and you know, there's one clear goal here: freedom in Iran. Women, life, freedom. I mean, that's you know, it's pretty simple. And so yeah, I mean, I just had to mention it because it bugs the shit out of me that there's still people who believe that this is the opportunity to scream their agenda against somebody else's. It's like, come on, let's try and get on the same page here momentarily. At least you do that on social media. Yeah. I don't know if that's what you need to do.
I mean, thankfully, it's very minimal compared to the overall just general crowd of people that are unified. So.
Yeah,
I've seen that kind of fight between people, and honestly, it's more about personal ego rather than their belief in some like ideology. But generally, it's amazing. Like you feel side by side of the people. It's amazing. Yeah.
I wanted to mention something that just moving away from the protests and the pride and Berlin, and we'll talk about that again with our first guest in a moment. And I should also mention Dr. Feridun Rahmani is coming up in about 30 minutes from now. I want to talk, though, about cyberspace and tech attacks, and we've been discussing internet blockages with respect to Iran. I want to talk about an internet blockage of a different kind that's happening. There's a weird thing happening in the West, and I don't know how empirical this is, but it's something that a lot of folks are talking about, and that is that those who have a platform, who are speaking out about Iran, presumably on the side of the revolution, of course, are suddenly finding that they're potentially blocked or having some trouble in social media. And I dare say this has happened to me on Instagram, where suddenly I can't post stories. Now, it might just be that my phone is not working or there's some issue going on. But this happened, and then I started seeing a number of people in social media, folks who are prominent, much more prominent than me in some cases in terms of their following and stuff, saying whenever I talk about Iran, my stories don't get seen, or they get edited, or they get deleted, and that this may be the handiwork of the Islamic Republic, the regime that is somehow, it's no secret that there's IRGC agents or tentacles of the regime in different parts of the world and here in Canada, and always looking at what's going on. But as nefarious and crazy as it sounds, it's actually not that unrealistic. So, Peg, I was telling you about it, and you did some research, and what did you find?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. So first thing is Meta has denied that they're censoring any sort of information. But I mean, like you said, even just looking at our immediate networks, we see people who are being shadow banned, which is exactly what you were referring to. So, you know, being unable to post or being able to post and not getting the same type of views or likes or any sort of interaction the way that you would have regularly. So that's the first thing. The other thing that I found out was there's a German-based Iranian journalist who was doing some digging on this matter, and what he actually found was a source through the German branch of TELUS International, which is actually a Canadian contractor that provides content moderation to Instagram. And so this source was quoted saying that the Iranian government has actually offered financial rewards for the deletion of any sort of account opposing the regime. And I mean, it's crazy. The numbers are something like 5,000 to 10,000 euros per account deleted. So that's the level that this is being taken to in terms of, you know, the IRGC monitoring and trying to get ahead of the spread of information, because we've seen that's been the most vital part of this revolution. Well,
and we know that if you really want to do this kind of thing and you've got big resources behind you, it's not that hard to hack into people's social media and fuck with it, right? It's just way too conspicuous. Again, I mean, maybe tomorrow I'll be able to story again. I don't know. But we've also noticed some weird stuff with our views. Like all of a sudden, we were, a couple of my opening essays were doing 400,000 views, and all of a sudden one wasn't being seen. And it was like, how is that going? And people were writing going, there's no volume, or I can't see it, or and that's a dramatic change. And it's shifted really quickly somehow in the last couple of week or so. And here I am not being able to story. Have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed it. I was posting stuff about Iran, and then to break it up, I posted a cheersing video, and then back to Iran. And I noticed the cheersing video, like drinks, what I'm cheersing with friends. That one had a higher view than any of the other videos, and it's supposed to go in chronological order. So how does
doesn't
that
make any
sense?
sense?
No.
Yeah.
The other thing that a lot of people are doing just to try and see what's going on is, you know how Instagram has those stickers when there's like events going on in the world? So I think right now it's Diwali. And so a lot of people are saying put stickers from that onto your stories, because that will change the algorithm. So the hashtags that we're using, whether it's Iran Revolution or Masa Amini or whatever, those are the ones that are being targeted. So if you put something else, then the chances of it showing up are a little bit more.
But how dystopian is this, right? That it's one thing that this regime is doing what it does inside Iran. It's another thing that it's even targeting, Iranian activists, near the borders of Iran, whatever. That a global effort to suppress those of anybody who's speaking out about Iran. Can you imagine how? Again, I mean, this is not. I don't feel comfortable saying that this is all confirmed, but it is highly conspicuous that so many people are experiencing the same thing and saying the same thing all at once. And we know some other folks in Toronto who are quite well known, or in terms of posting things, and suddenly are getting their stuff deleted and not seen. And
and this is Meta specifically, because I haven't noticed it on Twitter. So that's
exactly.
very suspicious.
Oh.
Yeah.
And they're the only ones who have actually come out and denied anything like this too.
Yeah.
So, the fact that they're even addressing it, I think, is
interesting. On the scale of fear and the intimidation, we like to think things are progressing in terms of the will of what seems like the universal will of near universal will of Iranian people inside Iran to want to change this regime. It was interesting last Thursday when we did that Voices in Iran inside Iran episode, and none of the people we spoke to could find anybody in Iran. One guy said, I have one guy who was a taxi driver that he found that was supporting the regime. There was literally they don't know anyone that isn't supporting this movement. That said, and the growth of it is of the movement, and the things like Berlin giving us all this energy. That said, it does seem like the crackdowns and the sheer intimidation and the detention and the torture and the Evin prison and all that is going house to house, is having an effect. It's hitting us directly in the sense that we've been every Thursday doing an episode where we do Voices Inside Iran, where our team members, who are quite resourceful, and we have all kinds of connections in Iran, especially with young people in different cities who have been involved in demonstrations, have been contacting folks and getting them to come on our show. We've been using pseudonyms. We sometimes use different communication platforms so that they don't get found out, etc. And I'd say in week one, there was no issues. In week two, there was some communications issues in terms of the cellular service or the internet going down or whatever. This week, we're contemplating whether to program something else this Thursday in terms of bringing on other voices, etc., rather than our Voices Inside Iran. I say that with some sadness, because I think the most powerful thing we've done in the last 5 weeks is put these voices of people inside Iran on our platforms. But this Thursday, we're thinking of doing something different, because we can't find anybody all of a sudden. I don't want to say all of a sudden, but we can't find anybody who really feels comfortable coming on. People are scared. Even the young activists who are in the demonstrations, and we know they are scared. A couple of them have said, okay, maybe I'll come, but and we don't want to be forcing them or goading them into doing this or something. But it's a really sad turn of events, because it suggests that, again, that level of intimidation, as much as the protests and the will for change are continuing in Iran, that intimidation is having some effect. Even some of the people that we brought on in the first week, so we know they want to come on, we know they're open to it, we know they're eloquent, we know they really want to do this, are now saying, I don't feel comfortable doing this anymore. What's going on here is terrifying in terms of what they're doing to people who are speaking.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to one of my friends that he kind of agreed a couple of weeks ago to come on the show, and he moved from Canada to Iran, and he goes to like poverty areas and help people, help child. And this morning I was talking to him and asked him to come again, and he said actually they're monitoring me, they're monitoring all my act and all my activities, and I it's better to not come on, it's not a good time to come on the show. And yeah.
Well, all right. Yeah. We're gonna go to our first guest, but before we do so, Kian, it's so nice to have you here. Give me a sense of how you've been feeling before we let you go, in terms of where you are on being hopeful or being. I mean, you're someone who's said for a long time that you want to visit Iran, but you can't do so, and won't do so, and tell me how you're feeling about where all this might go.
Despite all the shadow banning and all the efforts of the regime trying to put an end to this, they can't. Look at, when have we ever seen the world have this much attention, this many eyes on Iran? So it's now or never, and I don't think there's any stopping this. This is going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You're talking about them being scared inside, but they're still going out on the streets. They're still risking their lives. Yeah. Because what is the point of living life if you have no freedom? That's it. If I was out there, I would be doing the same thing. Life has no value if you have no freedom.
Yeah, so I think about you hosting that, co-hosting that Flight 752 thing, that memorial in the days after convocation, after the flight was shot down, and there was a big memorial at Convocation Hall in Toronto, and the slogan has always been "Never forgive, never forget," and I feel like we're living that right now. It's like no, we can't forgive, can't forget, have to keep at this, and speaking to those young people in Iran each week on this show has so convinced me that, because they say it makes a difference to them if we're out on the streets, it makes a difference to them if we're speaking, it makes a difference to them if we're holding placards or doing whatever we can. That's the reason we can't stop. Shadow banning, whatever. I can't post stories, or I'll figure out another way to do this then, but
I have no doubt it's going to happen. I have faith. This is it. This is the time. It might take longer than we expect it to, but this is going to keep getting bigger and bigger.
Thanks for being here. Nice to see you.
Good to see you guys.
Hopefully see you more regularly.
Good to see you here.
Good to see you, Shaya. I miss you too. You especially, Shaya.
Shaya and Pego, thank you guys. Let's, Shaya, do we have Shirin?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to London. And our first guest today is an award-winning Swedish-Iranian psychotherapist specializing in PTSD. Shirin Azadi has worked with victims of war and torture over 2 decades now. She is on the advisory board of Acute Doctors Abroad and has a new book coming out in February of next year entitled Once Upon a Time in Tehran. In the meantime, this weekend she was in Berlin for that historic demonstration in support of the new Iran Revolution. And right now, Shirin Azadi joins me from London, England. Hello.
Hello, Jian. How are you?
I'm well. I'm excited to, or very glad to have you on the show. We've wanted to do this for a while. Of course, we were going to wait for your book to come out. We've got to do that when your book does come out. But in the meantime, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for inviting me.
So let me start with a general question. How would you describe the last few weeks in your life and headspace since the killing of Mahsa Amini?
It's been hard. I think it's been hard for everyone, but it has been difficult in a sense that I work with victims of war and torture, and lots of clients and patients that we've been working with are experiencing flashbacks. And it has been hard because I've been working with them for the past 20 years, and it feels that the stories they tell me and the stories that I hear on a daily basis is it is painful. It's painful to see that that it's all happening, but I'm so glad that it's being voiced. I'm so happy, and I think it brings a lot of people strength to see that finally they can be heard, they can be seen, their voices, they're even helping to raise awareness, and that itself brings a lot of powerfulness.
When you talk about flashbacks, there's so much to discuss in terms of the trauma of the Iranian people, but are you talking in particular about Gashter Shah, the morality police? Are you talking about the regime murdering people? What in particular, when we talk about flashbacks, are you referencing?
Flashbacks in terms of being tortured. So I work with Iranians who've been tortured during the regime in the Evin prison. And these are people who are educated. These are people who are very open-minded to democracy, to liberty, freedom in Iran. And they've been voicing their, and obviously there is no freedom of speech. So therefore they've been imprisoned. And some of them have been able to not escape necessarily. Some have, some haven't, but have done their time. But during the time that they've served in the prison, they've been brutally tortured. The regime is using really brutal torture techniques. And maybe we won't have time to go through that today, but it feels that some of it are being voiced, and some may know and some may not, but people are seeing it today and people are hearing about it today, and it brings some sort of a comfort.
I knew that you'd worked with people who have spent time in Evin. What was your first thought when, I want to get to Berlin and this past weekend, but the weekend before, of course, there's always something going on. And the weekend before was that horrific fire and explosions and gunshots in Evin prison, where we know a lot of great poets and artists and writers and musicians and human rights campaigners, etc., are kept, and the kind of people that you work with. What was your first thought when you saw that?
My heart broke. I think, Jian, for 10 minutes, my left eye couldn't see. It was that traumatic to me as a person, as an Iranian, and that not being a therapist. I was just the person feeling pain. And I think that anyone who knows about Evin knows that, as you say, these are educated people, these are poets, these are authors, open-minded. This is a political prison.
Yes.
I have had the privilege, the honor to work with them, honestly. I've learned from them. So it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. I think my only escape was to write on Instagram and saying just help. And I think on that post, I tagged all the prime ministers that I could think of. Yes, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking.
Yes, go ahead.
Berlin, you are going to come to that. So
I was going to say, first of all, I know you grew up as a little kid in Iran. You spent your formative years growing up in Sweden. You're now in London. Tell me about making, and I know you've attended demonstrations in London in recent weeks. Tell me about making the decision that you wanted to be in Berlin this weekend.
The decision came when I was up. I was absolutely sure that I wanted to do this when last Saturday happened. But when it was announced, it felt that I had to be there in order to be part of a group who would be the unity who are voicing and saying that we want democracy in Iran, we want to have liberty in Iran, and the unity was beautiful. I think coming together and saying that no matter what or who we're supporting and who we're not supporting, we just want to have some sort of a democracy for Iranians. And I think the time is right. I do believe, after being in Berlin, that we can do this. I'm very sure of it. And the way that it was organized, the way that it was set up, and people who would come and speak of their pain, and us just being there in unity and voicing our need and our want for democracy was just beautiful. Berlin was beautiful.
You know, those of us, even though we've attended demonstrations of 50,000 and more here in Toronto and across the diaspora, those of us who saw those images from Berlin this weekend, I mean, I had tears in my eyes just looking at the pictures. You were there. We all know that the crowd was huge and there were inspirational speeches. What surprised you? Did anything happen this weekend that you didn't expect when going to a big demonstration in Berlin?
Yes, the unity surprised me. I feel that maybe I should be politically correct, but I honestly didn't think that it would be as beautiful, as united as we were. And that taught us something, that and brought lots of hope that we can actually do this. The unity, it was just one thing that everybody asked for. And that was freedom. Also, I feel that being that organized, yes, of course, Berlin, Germany had lots to offer. And I was pleasantly surprised by that too, that a lot of the German community joined in a fantastic way. We had volunteers guiding, we had so many supporting. I heard that there were Iranians in the hotel asking for or saying they were there for demonstrations, and they were offered plenty of advice, encouragement, support, assistance. It was beautiful. Also, having the singers, the artists, the Hamed Ismailun creating this beauty of voices.
Yeah.
People who had carried all that pain. My God, a mother who was speaking of losing her daughter, her son, her grandchild, her daughter-in-law in one go on the flight, and standing there and saying it. It was powerful. It was beautiful.
You know, on this question of unity, and sometimes we lament, we've been saying even in the demonstration this weekend in Toronto, you saw some different factions and stuff, and this is always an issue that we worry about in the Iranian community. But I started today's show with an essay called "The Rebirth of Iranian Pride," and where I was going with that was that somewhere in the cocktail of what's happened in the last few weeks, particularly led by the young girls and women and men in Iran who've been leading this fight against the regime most recently, something has changed in the Iranian diaspora too, and on these demonstrations and in the way we are acting. As someone who's grown up entirely in the diaspora, I can tell you that this is the first time in the last 43 years where I feel like we're out on the streets saying we're Iranian without an asterisk, without saying, but we're not the regime, we're not, we don't agree with this, we don't agree with that. Here's a disclaimer. There's this catharsis that we're feeling. Would you say you felt that in Berlin?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I did. I've been working with monarchists, and I have been working with those who are left-handed, and I've been working with someone who is a mujahideen from the mujahideen group. They all, throughout the sessions that I've had over the years, all want the same thing, and that's freedom, and that's liberty for Iran, that's democracy for Iran. So they would do anything, give their lives in order to have a democratic country. So I felt that this Saturday, and I've been feeling it in the demonstrations, as you say, slowly, gradually in London too, that we can come together.
But what about the pride piece? Do you feel that?
Yes.
The pride in being Iranians, it's not something that,
Yes.
quite frankly, it's not something we're used to. I mean, we
No.
tend to, we say all those things about Iranians invented everything and all that, but we're not, we're always a bit looking over our shoulder because we know that the world hasn't seen the best face of Iran in the last 43 years in terms of the headlines and the stereotypes and the generalizations and the regime, right?
Absolutely. 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 I was brought up in Sweden. So when we first arrived in Sweden, there was lots of things that you would hear as a child, and you would be asked to go back, or it would be things like, how many camels did your father own? Or it would be things like, well, you asked for the revolution, or these are the, you asked for the scarf, and having hijab, and a lot of arrogance, and ignorance. But I think that, as you say, I can proudly say, and I can raise my head and say, I'm Iranian. And these are our women, these are our men who are asking for freedom and democracy, and they're giving their lives for us to, in hope for a democratic country. Yes. Yeah.
There was I know that we saw these images of, at Berlin in the weekend, of buses coming in from different European countries of Iranians. So you had this unity of Iranians, but also Iranians of a number of different national stripes, right? You had Swedish Iranians and British Iranians. Tell me a bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it was magnificent. It was just so beautifully organized. I cannot say enough about that. We found buses from Gothenburg. So there were 3 buses that we came across from Gothenburg, and then there were 3 buses from Stockholm, and we waved to them, and some we spoke to actually, because they were just entering the buses, and we share that pride, as you mentioned, and again, happiness and joy for the unity. It was beautiful, and it was just so funny that they just had finished the dinner. Some were actually brushing their teeth on the bus, and we could see that they were sort of getting ready to go to sleep, and waving and cheering. It was beautiful seeing those buses go by. But then the following day, we actually met some from Amsterdam, Holland, various places. But and they were happy to have come too, and we chatted to a number of the Iranians there too, and everybody was just happy, so happy. And it was just that beauty of sharing, and the weather was great, and with this flash mob that I sent you, and they were joining one by one.
You sent me a video of a bunch of people spontaneously in Berlin the next day after the demonstration, singing Baraye, right? Singing the song that's become the effective anthem of this. It was beautiful. I mean, that's happening everywhere, but we're all experiencing that in one moment around the world. Let me just ask you before I let you go. I'm so grateful for the time today, and I once again should mention I really do want to do your whole story and how you came to do what you do, and talk about your new book in the future. But for now, you are a psychotherapist. You do specialize in PTSD. You have been in the Iran space and working with Middle Eastern folks. Can I ask you not just about what Iranians inside Iran experience, but what are the psychological effects of what we are experiencing as a global community? Actually, let me say the disclaimer that I don't want to minimize what's happening to those in Iran who are on the front lines and talk about the diaspora. But for those people around the world right now, Iranians who are, as we've been talking about each week, doom scrolling. You know, we all spend 24/7 looking through our Instagram and our social media, looking at these horrible images. And what are the psychological effects of that? Seeing children dying whose names we're learning and ages we know, and feeling that horrible twist in our stomach, and at the same time the inspiration of seeing children and others, young girls fighting for change in Iran. Tell me what has gone through your head in terms of assessing our global community, if you can do so psychologically.
I think the powerlessness, the burden, the guilt, the survival guilt is an issue that we're all carrying. You know, watching what's happening to Iranians inside Iran today. I think it's a very heavy burden to carry. I don't think that the powerlessness should be underestimated, because some people are going through hardship, not knowing how to cope with that, not having enough coping mechanism or support net group for it, and also feeling that all they can do, wait all week to do the demonstration at the end of the week to bring ourselves some sort of a relief. We have social media to escape to in order to being able to have some sort of a release for the feelings that we are feeling. Many people suffer from broken sleeping patterns. I hear many waking up in the middle of the night. Many have said to me that this is their pattern today, or early in the morning, just to catch up with the news and see what's going on. And it's hard. It's hard not being able to, especially when the social media is cut off. You feel that there is this group of loved ones fighting for freedom, and there's no way you can reach. You search for some sort of a news from anywhere. When the incident in Evin happened last Saturday, I think I had hundreds of messages saying that, Shirin, can you just share anything? Can you share any news that you've heard? And that just goes to show that many slept around 4 o'clock in the morning, not knowing what was going on, sticking to television channels. So it just goes to show that it is hard to find how to release that those tensions, that guilt.
Well, also how to navigate our own health. I mean, do you have a prescription for this? What one of our team members said a couple of weeks ago here on the show said, you know, she said, I have to take a break for a couple of days. I had to take a break because I was going crazy. It was really affecting my mental state. And another team member said, well, you know, there are people dying in Iran. How dare you? You know, kind of like, took her to task, saying, well, what, like we can't handle just looking at Instagram? But it is a difficult burden to, you're right. I mean, I find myself unable to sleep just seeing what's happening, and some of it is FOMO, some of it is fear of missing out the latest atrocity, and I've got to say something, I've got to do something, but some of it can't be healthy in terms of the marathon nature of what's going to have to happen here. Do you have some sort of counsel on that?
I think it's more looking at it. It's more like diving. You just have to be careful not to run out of oxygen. You just have to be able to care for yourself. We have to remember that our energy is needed. We have to remember how to balance it out. We have to know that we drown otherwise, and we won't be any good to anyone if we do. So we just need to balance it out and being able to cope.
So how do you do that?
Mm-hmm. So what's important is to remember that self-care is important. If you can monitor yourself and see that you're actually stepping out of your, what's called a boundary, then you probably need to see how you can balance it all out. It depends. Every individual is different. So I couldn't give a general advice to all of the Iranians. But I think what's important is that when you see that you're not interacting with the world not the way that you used to do, but in a stressful situation, then you need to see to yourself that you are taking care of yourself. If you feel that you're not, for instance, drowning as much, that you're not seeing to your basic needs, like whether it's sleep or eating or self-care, like shower, because many may get out of that routine. So that's important. This is very, very, very important, because your energy is needed. You need to care for yourself in order to offer positive, healthy energy to Iranians in Iran. They're looking out. They're seeing us. They want us to hear them. So therefore, yes, we're needed. Our energy is needed. We need to be focused. Stay focused.
And a final question to you. You're a mother, yes?
Yes, I am.
How do you cope with, or what are your thoughts on kids being on the front lines of the revolution in Iran? They're so inspirational. They're incredible. They're seemingly fearless as well. But they're kids, and they're being killed. Reflect on that, and reflect on the role that you think parents need to play in this. I don't know if obviously we can't tell Iranians inside Iran what to do, but what goes through your mind, both as a mother and a psychotherapist?
I think it's so painful for us to watch that as parents and as any human being. I think Iranian or non-Iranian, seeing a child being on the front line, it's devastating. And I think that I did watch, Yes, it was a clip that I watched, and the child was saying goodbye to its room before leaving. And that was heartbreaking. It was truly heartbreaking. He had made up his mind that he may not see his room today. And that is inspiring. It's absolutely inspiring. The fact that he wanted to do this because he believed that this is what he can do for his country. Many do not tell their parents where they're going or what they're doing. So again, this is, it seems that they've made up their minds about where they want to go with this and how they want to live or not live. They've made that decision. You don't want to encourage. It's so hard. It is inspiring, but and something that one would call legendary. But again, what breaks my heart is the fact that there is no other option. That just says and speak volumes of the brutality that they're facing, and they would do anything. Yeah. They would do anything.
Yeah. Shirin, I thank you so much for your time today and your sage perspective, and I hope you come back soon. And thanks for the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Jian. Thank you, Rook. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Forgetting the smell of the warm summer air. I live in a town where you can't smell a thing. You watch your feet for cracks in the pavement. Up above, aliens hover, making home movies for the folks back home of all the these weird creatures who lock up their spirits, draw holes in themselves, and live for the secrets.
This is a special edition of Rook, The Uprising, The Rebirth of Iranian Pride, episode 209. Back here in the Rook studio with Dr. Feridun Rahmani. He's an associate professor at York University. His research focuses on critical human rights in the Middle East, social exclusion, justice, war, violence, ethnicity, social policy, and quality of life. His most recent book, published in 2020, is entitled Rooftop Societies, The Middle East Paradox. He's also an expert on Kurdish affairs. And right now, Dr. Feridun Rahmani is joining me in the Rook studio. Hello, sir.
Hello, Jian. Thanks for having me here.
It's a great pleasure. It's a long time coming. I've wanted to have you here for a long time. You teach at my alma mater. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for the invite. It's a great pleasure.
Let me ask you a general question to begin with. You've been an academic focusing on Iran for many years. Did you have any sense, say 2 months ago, that one more atrocity, in this case the killing of Mahsa Amini, could trigger what has now become effectively a new revolution?
Honestly, I knew something going to come up. I didn't know, and I was not sure it's going to come from Kurdistan, because we have seen in the last 43 years in Iran, we have seen, especially in Kurdistan, I have witnessed worse cases than these. I remember a few months after the revolution, when the jihad against the Kurdish population was issued by Ayatollah Khomeini, and many young girls, they were executed. Before getting them executed, the Ayatollah gave the fatwa that they can be taken off of their virginity, having sexually harassed and abused, and then put them under execution. We have seen worst situation against the gender and girls, but I never thought really that this will trigger a national and a international movement, Jian Azadi, which caused the uproar against the entire atrocities of the government.
People have learned
state.
the Kurdish words now. Jian Azadi, that's the Kurdish for...
Kurdish name, yeah.
Yes.
The Kurdish name originally comes from the culture which traditionally we see in our culture, the kind of a equality within the gender. If you check the Kurdish collective dances, a group dance, Halparke, the girls and boys, they are holding each other's hand and dancing together. It's if you come to my house, and before my mom passed away, she's bringing tea inside. It's not just bringing the hand outside to hand the tea or the cookies. She's coming and shaking hand with you and welcomes you. And this is a traditional Kurdish culture where the women are part of the society, are not confined of domestic incarceration, as unfortunately Sharia law has brought to the community. Unfortunately, in the last 43 years, implementation of the worst male-dominated interpretation of Islam has caused atrocities towards not only ethnic minorities such as Kurds, ethnic religious minorities such as Baha'is, Zoroastrians, or Sunnis in Iran, also against women and children, child marriage. We never had it even in the last hundreds of years, much of a child marriage in the country.
It's an if you will, let's call it a new Iranian revolution that spans to all corners of Iran right now. But there is a distinctly Kurdish element or precipitant. You know, Mahsa, or as she's known in the Kurdish language, Jina Amini, came from a Kurdish Iranian background. Can you describe the symbolic significance of her killing, the way she was treated and killed for the Kurdish community?
Jina has been a symbol of human rights violation. fundamental rights violation by the most atrocious regime in the entire world of today, as well as I can believe is nothing less than worst historical atrocious regimes like Hitler or Mussolini or Ceausescu and many others. They have.
This is worse.
It's I think worse because none of them they had the guts to tell their own people what to wear, what to eat, what to do. Iranian constitutional law is saying exactly the same decree of Ayatollah Khomeini that Hakim ben Jano Malum Namus Mardom. It means the entire total sovereignty and guardianship not only on the people and their property, on their even honor and women. This is too far, really, of interpretation of any cultural or religious elements. We never seen it. We never seen it even within any other Islamic cultures. I don't think even Bin Laden had such guts to tell its own people that you don't have, that you have a full sovereignty on your entire people's women and girls. But unfortunately, Khamenei and Ayatollah Khomeini, they have that. They have given that credit to their self.
But was there an added element here that Mahsa Jina, amongst Kurdish Iranians, that this was one of us? She was one of us.
Jina, yes, was a girl of 22 years, innocent. If the girls at the beginning of the revolution, they were executed, it was because they were because of their political activism. They were socialist, communism, nationalist, or whatever. But now they are targeting the simple, non-political, oriented faces, young generations, 8 years, 10 years, 20 years, the girls. And this Jina was traveling to Tehran for 4 days in the last summer holidays to enjoy with the brother, visiting some simple market area in the center of Tehran. And then just because a few layers of hair, you have to take her to custody and beat her to death. Actually, Jina has been a symbol of cultural resistance, ethnic resistance, human rights resistance, especially for Kurdish people, because traditionally the Kurds, they have been saying, take whatever I have, kill me. Take my house, take my home, do not touch my wife, do not touch my women. And this is very fundamental in terms of culture. We may call it patriarchy or something, but this has been happening as an honor or respect, whatever, while this girl has been really singled out, taken away from the community, taken away from the family and brother, and atrociously has been dealt with for something which we have seen a discrimination. Many other girls, they have been easily interrogated and then left free, and they have walked back to the home. Nowadays, it's totally different.
I mean, even the interrogation is an atrocity, but for it to go this far. Can I just ask you anecdotally, or as a sidebar, I should say? I mean, I really don't know the answer to this. Is there I've heard the name Mahsa and the name Jina used kind of interchangeably. Is there a symbolic difference for you?
Originally, like my son, has a Kurdish name, but unfortunately, when you go to the Iranian embassy or you go back to Iran, those names, because of their cultural Kurdishness, they don't accept it. Jina is a very, very simple name, which means zendegi, or the life, and it's a really part of the culture. When many girls all around the country, they are named Gina, but unfortunately in the documentation they are not accepted, and this is always.
These are things that I marvel at as a kid who grew up in the West. So you can't have a document where your name is Gina?
No.
What would be wrong with the name Gina? What is
because for some reason they accepted Mahsa, which is an Iranian name as well, is very respectful, but again, parents decided to put her name.
But people don't have the right to name their kid.
Many names, Kurdish names, are not
remarkable.
I remember at the beginning of revolution, many was more free, open. Many Kurdish families, they were putting their names like Shoresh, Jian, Juan, or Gina. But slowly, systemically, they forced the people not to.
So you literally go to some kind of institution someplace and they say, we don't accept this name?
You're not getting your ID, you're not getting your passport. Plus, in public spaces, which is all controlled by the government, Guzinesh system, which is a selection for university or public jobs or teacher, whatever. As soon as they see Gina name, you're not getting it. 100%.
Again, for a lot of Iranians that have grown up in Iran or are currently in Iran, they sort of roll their eyes that I'm even asking all these questions. Yes, of course, Jian, that's the way it is. But it really is remarkable, the level of suppression that we're not going to accept the name that you wanted to name your kid or that your kid wants to be called. Again, not to say that there's anything wrong with the name Mahsa, of course, but it is really, really remarkable, the depth of this stuff. We've been hearing since the beginning of these 5 weeks, Dr. Rahmani, that the strongest and maybe the most universal opposition to this regime in a community and participation in this revolution has been amongst Kurds from Kurdistan. What can you tell us about how deep the commitment to change is?
Definitely, the Kurds they have been one of the first groups to speak up against the call of Ayatollah Khomeini for a referendum towards Islamic Republic, because our understanding was that we are here for independence. We are here independence of the country from west and east. That was the Istiqlal, which Ayatollah Khomeini was claiming. The people, they were for that, for the freedom, Azadi, better life and less involvement of Sawak in the people's life was beautiful. But then when he started Islamic Republic, no word less or more. And that was an issue. When Dr. Abdurrahman Qasimlu, one of the Kurdish leaders, spoke up against, and he got 97% in the first Iranian election in Kurdistan, in Mahabad, Eastern Azerbaijan and Kurdistan. He got one of the most words. Ayatollah Khomeini called him Mahdurul Dam. He should be killed. He's not supposed to come to Tehran. And many Kurdish elected members of parliament, and the first parliament, they were not really sure to go back to go to the assembly. They spoke up against the Islamic Republic. The referendum was abandoned by the Kurdish Iranians, as well as many other Iranian nationalists, Jabhe Milli, and modern women who did not want to really be part of it. But unfortunately, even many political organizations who they were for revolution and for ethnic rights in theory, but practically they become of agent and agitator of Islamic Republic. That was the success for Ayatollah. But the Kurds at the beginning of the revolution, they were against the Islamization of the country. at least Islamization of the Kurdistan. I remember I was going to Sanandaj, Kermanshah, and Mahabad in the cities. The soldiers, they were from Isfahan or Tehran or whatever, they were coming to Kurdistan, and they were surprised when they see on the passage and the shoppings, the Iranian musics like Gagush, Daryush, and all still playing. And they were buying the cassettes, taking it for home in Tehran and Isfahan because it was forbidden. And this is true. You can communicate with many Iranian Kurds at the time. They will tell you the reality of this story. And this shows that the culture does not accept part of our culture is music, or religion is music. The Yazidis, Yarosan, they play music in their things. We are growing up with the tambourine, violin, and all those things. We have seen it. Never my father said this is haram. And this is horrible when a leader comes to save the country and calls for separation of male and female.
But the determination amongst the Kurdish people, the Iranian Kurds, to seemingly change or die. We're willing to be out on the streets. We're willing to stand up to this to a level that we almost don't see in other parts of Iran. Where does that come from?
The people, they have to come in understanding that there exists some other world, that we come to this world for one time. Either we live or we live it properly as a human with the dignity, or we live the life with respect and dignity. So dignity is part of their life. The Kurds, they have been struggling for their rights all around the world. Unfortunately, in 16th century, when 75% of the Iranian territory, which was majority of the Kurdish region, was separated from Iran in Chaldoran War, and that was the first secessionist action by Iranian regime, Safavids, which separated a big portion of it. And that still is in mind and heart of many Kurds, not only in Iran, even outside, why we have been separated from our home country. And now we are forced to speak Turkish, Arabic, Syrianic, or whatever. While in Iran, we are celebrating Nowruz and Charsham Suri, and they have to deal with the police atrocities and other things. I think the people in Iran as well, they came to an understanding. They have come to understanding that this is a time to be our identity.
Yeah.
The thing which I was talking in my Rooftop Societies book.
Yes.
Unfortunately, in Middle East, from coast to coast, from Yemen to North Africa, the people, they are not their self. They change their identity because of fear, because of atrocities around, because of the conflicts and wars, and because of, I'm afraid, maybe I'm not getting the services or resources which I have to get by just showing off my identity. If you are Shiite, I'm Sunni, I may hide it because you might do something to me or I do something to you. That identity, rooftop society, on the streets, you live differently than inside and on top of your flat roof. It's horrible. Has to really be being eliminated. The people has to be seen equal and in equitable understanding.
You mentioned Sanandaj a moment ago, a major city in Kurdistan and the Kurdistan region of Iran. It's been described recently as a war zone. I mean, what is happening in Sanandaj and places like Zahedan and Erdebil is at another level in terms of the repression from what we hear in Shiraz and Tehran, etc. What do you know about what's been happening in Sanandaj?
Unfortunately, there is no statistics of what's going on, but with my communications and emails with many different friends inside and outside, or the ones have taken refuge in camps in Iraqi Kurdistan, they run away from Iran. I am in contact on daily basis, and there are thousands of people, they have been injured. Many tens of people, they have been killed, and maybe hundreds, they are in jail right now. Many families, they are not really, they are afraid to speak up or even mention their kids. They have been captured. They don't want to speak up. They don't want to mention their name, because they feel as soon as they reveal their name of their kids captured or killed, some other members of the family, they may suffer. We will know this maybe in weeks or months, when everything calms down and we know the situation. If the regime has been taken down, then reports gonna come out. Unfortunately,
you can't even mention the name of your kid that's died.
No, I have two names I show you in my phone, the relatives and friends. Some of them, the kidney is destroyed and is looking for medication or whatever, and they are looking for sources within the friend and relatives. The regime is looking for those things, especially in Kurdistan region, to make every single member of that community their mouth shut, and make them afraid. Unfortunately, since day one, the Kurdistan region, all the Kurdish areas from Ilam to Urumia region, especially in Sanandaj area, has become a military base for Iranian regime. If you calculate 5-6 million people, I think 2-3 million soldiers, security forces, administratives, ayatollahs, representative of the things, they are with their family widely spread in entire region, and many people, they have their own authority and guns to use it in that region. Many.
What do you mean they have their own authority?
But they have full authority from the governor in the region to act. And there, as Khamenei said, Atash Bekhtiyar, you have the full authority of the your officer. In Iranian Kurdistan, especially in Sanandaj, is totally different story. If Basiji or Lebas Shakhsi or private
plainclothes militia,
if they afraid in Tehran or Isfahan to use their force violently, some of them in Kurdistan, they don't fear it, because they will be honored and respected by their.
Well, they also bank on we saw this with Sisam Balochistan. They bank on the world not caring as much, right? If it's not in Tehran and it's not in Shiraz or Iran, not even the people not caring as much. I mean, this raises the issue around how we, there is some news coming out of Iran. It's difficult because of the crackdowns on the internet, on communication, on cellular devices, etc. The news, though, generally tends to be from the big cities, from the big urban area. We don't know how much is going on, and we know there was a massacre in Zahedan. We know it's a war zone in Sanandaj. As you say, there's no greater authority than you. If you have no idea what the numbers are, I don't know who does. How does that reverse itself? I mean, how do we get past the point where we don't know what's happening in the periphery of the country?
About the first part of your talk about the outside world, honestly, I never expected that all the Western countries to come and be in alignment with or supporting the voices of Iranian young uprisers and revolutionary.
You think that's a pipe dream to think that the West would care?
The problem is people like Robert Malley. Yesterday, if you hear the news, that he tells just a bunch of people they have come and protesting against Iranians. Robert Malley is unfortunately Biden's administrator in the foreign affairs desk on Iran. He is responsible for the desk of Iran, and he is just still appeasing the Islamic Republic's authorities to come forward and continue the negotiation on diplomatic relations and atomic things. People like Robert Malley, they are a shame to international community, as well as shame to Iranians, hundreds of Iranians and their families who they lost their kids and families. Robert Malley has to go and see what's going on in Iran and what's going on in Kurdistan. There are hundreds of students and girls and boys, they are massacred and killed. Robert Malley will be on a international criminal court if continues like this. I believe you cannot support the Iranian regime in this situation. This is very dangerous. Don't become Milosevic or somebody else. We are losing our people and lives. We are losing our people. They are dying on the streets. So Iranians, they are suffering. We need support. We don't want gun. We want you to be with our people. We want that international community, at least if you're not becoming a voice of support, don't become a support of Iranian regime. Mm-hmm. And this is not good for our people. It's sorry for my sensitivity, but people in Iran will take care of their problems. They know what they want. I remember when I was a young 15 years and 16 years in Iranian revolution against the Shah, I thought we're going to have a freedom, but I didn't know what freedom means. Freedom for many of us was get rid of Americans, because we were pissed off with 1953's coup against the Mossadegh. Mm-hmm. We were pissed off and was rightfully, but I didn't know that freedom means I have a right to wear the clothes I want.
Right, yeah.
Now we feel it. We know the truth of human rights. We know the essence of freedom and democratic rights, the people's sovereignty, the people's respect and dignity. I remember at the beginning of revolution calling somebody liberal. It was kind of negative things. They were calling Bazargan and many Jebhe Milli or National Front members
liberal nationalists.
Liberal,
yeah.
And liberal was negative. Now becomes a positive thing in our slogans. Liberty is the most desirable slogan and goal for all Iranians, 85 million, not only in Iran, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Saudi Arabia, in many other countries. Liberty, women's right, children's right, Jian Azadi is something has become a fundamental democratic principles, and we have to go that word. And we have to be careful. Calling somebody tajziyagara or secessionist, calling somebody militaristic or whatever, it's harming our
You're
unity.
referencing, I mean, sometimes we hear the Kurds are, the Iranian Kurds are sort of painted with the brush of, oh, these are a bunch of separatists. They want to eventually separate from Iran. Talk to me about that.
Unfortunately, I hear this in many places and within many communities. And fortunately, many of them, they never ever communicated with the Kurdish people while they are blaming the Kurds are secessionists and separatists. In Iraq, if the Kurds, they want to be separatists, that's their rights. because they are not culturally, historically part of the Iraqi Shiite Sunni, which they have no, even after 2 years, they don't have even the established government in Iraq. If they are separating from Bashar Assad, that's their right. You know, we are, I think, part of Iranian history and culture. If we want to have a federal system, that's our rights. And the people, they are deciding. That's the people and the vote they're deciding. But never ever in the history of Iranian activism, political activism, from Komolezhikov, which is 100 years, and then Hizb Democratic Kurdistan of Iran, Democratic Party of Kurdistan, or Komala. None of them, A to Z, I know all of them, none of them has been talking about separation from Iran. We cannot separate it. Why? If we have 10 million...
Well, there was a Republic of Mahabad in the late 1940s.
It was a federal part of Iranian federal system. We can talk on that. It's propaganda. Republic of Mahabad was part of the...
but it's getting into the weeds. Yeah. It's not really where I want to go. But in terms of this question of... you mentioned earlier the different ethnic groups that exist within the Iranian tapestry. Do you... I mean, it's so strange to even have these conversations when the goal of, you see, there's this universal goal of how do we get rid of this regime? Let's get rid of this regime. But do you worry that somehow emerging from this is not a united Iran? That where every one of these groups, including Kurds, are part of are on the bus together, if you will?
I guarantee, as Faridun Rahmani, professor at York University, a professor at the Equity Studies, I guarantee you, as long as I am alive, I prove it, that all those Kurdistan democratic parties, Democrat, Kumala, and those 5 political Kurdish parties, because I have been in daily contact with most of them, I have been sitting with the chairs and directors of those political parties, as well as in Iraqi Kurdistan, as well as in Europe or Canada. I have been talking to all of them, and none of them is willing or wishing to separate from Iran. My wish and desire is to, from Kabul, drive without border all the way to Syria, Damascus, and Istanbul. We should have a unified Middle Eastern Union. Why we should eliminate that from our young generations? Why that happening in Canada, Mexico, and United States, that happening in Germany, France, and Austria, doesn't happen in Tehran, Istanbul, and Baghdad? Or why we should prevent such things?
Do you think it's possible?
It's
Do you think
possible.
It's realistic?
It's everything. We are not inventing the wheel. Everything is on the table. Human rights is there. Respect is there. Universal citizenship is there. Respect towards women's rights. Exactly the April 1971 was 79 was the Iranian Revolution. 6 months later, 1979. Right. August 18, 1979 was a compendium for the women's rights.
Yes.
The same time, Ayatollah Khomeini was forcing women to cover their faces and use chador and headscarf. The United Nations was signing an agreement for eliminating discrimination against women. Exactly the same months. So we are going in a different direction. The world is moving forward. We are going backward. The will is there. Use it. Women's rights is there. Children's rights is there. Principles for democratization of countries is there. The constitution, why should be a male-dominated interpretation? And that's a Ayatollah-dominated interpretation of religion. Not young generations, they know what they want. 46% of Iranians, they are under 30 years. 46, half of the population is under 30 years. Yes. They are not having any...
More than that, I think.
Maybe more than that.
Yes.
It's almost close to 50%
Yes.
population. They are young.
Yes,
Not majority non-married. They are at the schooling or looking for jobs.
Yes.
Why we should make decisions for them? If you remember, in one of the demonstrations when I was talking, Hamid Ismail Younes and his institutions,
Yes.
they called me and I spoke into.
Yes.
I said one of my well wishes, one of my fundamental desires and wishes is that in the future the majority of women take the role of leadership. We failed, majority of us. The men, we failed. We failed because we couldn't stop Ayatollah Khomeini to be in power. We failed because we gave him to deal with our women's atrociously. We allowed him to have the guts and call jihad against the women, jihad against universities, jihad against ethnic minorities, jihad against Baha'is. When we want to really, in not only Iran, in Islamic world, when we want to come to an understanding, we are unequal, no matter what color, no matter what religion, no matter what fiqh jurisprudence you are believing, no matter what language you're speaking. I'm pretty sure in a democratic Iran, if 500 Azaris, they live in Sanandaj, they will have rights to speak in their own mother tongue, along with Persian language or Farsi language as a unified language in the country. I'm pretty sure if it's 100 Baluchis or Kurds or Fars, they're living in Tabriz, they will have a chance to speak their mother tongue, and the city and the mayor of the region will give them the chance to be equal to others. That's my wish and desire, and will happen. We are moving. We never thought. I remember with 1998, I was doing my PhD with Professor Wolfgang Schulz in Vienna. He asked me, sign up here for an email. I said, what is email? I didn't know what is email. And now, as soon as we finish, you're going to click the button, Rook gonna be all around the world. Kurdish people,
yes.
Afghanis, Iranians, Germans,
yes.
all around the world. World will change, Jan. World will change. We will see it, I promise you. Khamenei won't see it, but we will see it. And I hope one day we come to understanding that we don't have separatists. We have different opinions. We have different pluralistic mosaics of cultures and ideologies. I don't care what kind of ideology and religion you believe, but we have all equal rights and equal saying in future of our country.
Let me, on that note, a couple of final questions. Thank you for being here. Okay. You have spoken at one of the big rallies. You're aware of these big rallies. On the weekend there was maybe 100,000 people in Berlin. I opened today's program with an essay called "We're Witnessing the Rebirth of Iranian Pride," talking about how what these young people in Iran have started has distribute itself throughout the world, where we're all feeling this pride, where we could actually even talk about being Iranian in a way that we haven't for 43 years. We don't feel like we have to issue the asterisks that we're not with this regime when we say we're Iranian, and we're walking down Yonge Street in Toronto. Do you feel like this is are you feeling proud? Do you feel Iranian pride in a different way now than you have in recent decades?
I am proud of Iranians, today's Iranians, especially young generation, because first of all, in the Iranian Revolution, 1971, 79, those young generations, they were not part of the revolution. Today they are. And those they were part of the revolution, they didn't know what they want. Now we know what we want. The freedom is clear for us. Democratic rights, it's clear for us. And I'm very proud because now unification has come. There are issues and problems, and they're aware of it. There are different voices and colors coming in between to destruct the unity, and the people are aware of it. And I'm really proud of them. And I hope they stay on the top of the movement. They are staying on the top of the future changes and control of politics. We don't want to give a mic to the one separates me and you. We may have different opinions, but all of us, we have a heart for change and improvement for entire population.
How do we navigate that? How do we navigate the not giving the mic to the... I mean, there's people who many folks point out right now and say, you've been enabling this regime for the last 40 years. We don't want you a part of this. What do you say about that?
I think we have to be voice of a voiceless people in Iran. We have to become a voice of a voiceless. In Iranian revolution, those ones, they had voice who they were bending towards Ayatollah Khomeini. If somebody criticizing you, you have to invite it and really give a chance to speak up. For first 30 years post-revolution, in the majority of medias, they were focusing on their own ethnic or group issues. Mm-hmm. I remember the nationalist or royalist or Padishahi or constitutionalist, they were talking about what they are talking. We hear that.
But I'm talking about the divisions in the diaspora. You know, when on the weekend in a Toronto rally, a bunch of people are screaming at an MP saying, we don't want you here because we've seen pictures of you with this regime. We don't want you part of this. How do you react to that?
I've seen, for example, something against Johari came up. Mm-hmm. He did a horrible and fatal mistake. He was elected by people, no matter how, with support maybe or whatever. I don't have facts, but the first and most fatal mistake he did, he was instead calling the community to go to his gatherings. He's calling the Ayatollah regime's terrorist members of parliament to come to his office. I have seen him many times. He was my friend, but I was really disappointed.
So again, my question is: is this the time that we should deal with that, or is that something that you put off until the? I mean, that's the question, right?
We should deal with it in a diplomatic matter, not really being too harsh and really excluding some parts. But we have to touch on those problems. Those are problems.
Okay. Yeah. We're going to do a whole program about that, so we don't have to get into it here right now. A final question. The crystal ball is impossible, but what is if you were to guess, if you were to imagine, where do you think things will go in the coming weeks and months?
There are sociologists, they don't
I know. I did the disclaimer for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
But I think if Western countries, they continue the way what they are doing right now, it's going to be a bloodshed in Iran. Ayatollahs will militarize the entire region. And there will be a defection within the military for sure, if that happens.
Wait a second. What did you say? If the Western countries do what?
They don't support the people of Iran.
If they continue to not support the people of
supporting,
Iran.
Or they continue to support, like Robert Mali supporting the Iranian regime.
Implicitly or otherwise support the regime. Yeah.
If practically become a voice of Iranian young people and the families, they are suffering with the atrocious regime, under the atrocious regime of Iran. If they are not supporting,
right,
and they continue the way...
Even though they issue the platitudes. I mean, Biden has said, we support the women of Iran, etc. But
it's not in word, in action. Yes. We want action. Yes. We want that the diplomats who they are all around the world, their banks, the Minister of Foreign Affairs should not travel outside Iran. He's not supposed to be there. When those continue this way, the Iranians, they will think about that to crack down on the people harshly, and then possibly part of the military will defect from the regime, and that will be a military confrontation. Mm-hmm. If the people, they get gone through that defection, the guns leaks in some of the cities, then we will have a kind of a few weeks civil war in Tehran, Isfahan, Shiraz, and centers of Iran. I hope it's not happening. Yeah. That's the worst scenario.
It's scary. Yeah.
But the Ayatollahs, they want that. But if they do that,
they want a civil war.
they want, if finally they have to leave the country, they have nowhere to go. And Ayatollah Khamenei and son, they may see that as an option, and that's the horrible mistake if they do, because if there is a chance they will be put on a national fair trial, they will lose that, and their entire group and family will be in danger. The people, they won't stop. That's one thing. The other thing is, if Americans, they do a mistake to support few generals and do a coup to change the direction, that's another mistake if that happens. I hope the desire is that Khamenei goes away by itself, suicide or whatever, the way Hitler did, and people call for a preliminary government and call all the layers of society to be part of a referendum of change towards democracy, human rights. I don't care about the title of the future country. The ethnic rights has to be reinstated. The women's rights has to be reinstated in full power. The children's right, environment's right, animals' right, people's right, right to conversion in all the way to rights to mother tongue has to be reinstated in the country. And I'm pretty sure young generation, they will go for it. They will support it because they are familiar with the needs of the Iranians' modern 21st century.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Dr. Feridun Rahmani, Associate Professor at York University. His latest book, published in 2020, is entitled Rooftop Societies, The Middle East Paradox. Dr. Feridun Rahmani has been with me here in the Rook studio. This is full time for Rook for today. Thank you to everybody for listening to us. For all your information about what you hear on this program, for all of our previous episodes, for special editions, videos, funnies, different edits, Rook moments, our different programs, rookmedia.com is the hub of all things Rook. rookmedia.com. Please check that out. And thank you to the amazing team who put this show together and who work so hard every day on this program. Sabi Roham, talented Anahita, Parisa, Pega, Merdad, and Shaya. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. And as ever, Mizun Bashi.